In the middle of a traffic jam, Emile and his father Francois are having an argument because Emile didn't want to come and they were late because of him. Eventually, Emile gets tired of his father's scolding and gets out of the car, and Francois follows him. That's when they notice ambulance shaking and something screaming inside before the windows burst. Francois immediately drags Emile to cover as the ambulance doors swing open and a half-bird, half-human creature appears and lands on the roof of the ambulance. Security officers rush in to fend off the mutant, who resists and shouts at them, frightening everyone on the street. The mutant manages to fend off officers and then escape. Sometime later, Emile and Francois arrive at the hospital to see Doctor, who is treating Emile's mother Lana, who is also mutating into an animal. It turns out that over the past 2 years, many people across the country have suddenly mutated into more bestial forms, and most of the time they turn out to be very cruel. The authorities try their best to capture them all and place them in special facilities, where the mutants are sedated with sedatives while they are examined in the hopes of finding a cure. Most people are afraid of the mutants and want them locked up. Emile doesn't want to see his mother because he has become suspicious of her after she accidentally scratches his face, but Francois insists that she is still family to him. Doctor explains that a new, more modern reception center has opened in the south and Lana should be moved there, which Francois quickly agrees to. He wants to move there with Emile so that they can start a new life, away from the judgment of the people who already knew Lana. When they enter Lana's room, Emile notices all the scratches on the walls and doesn't come too close. Francois sits with her and talks because he thinks it helps, but Emile doesn't think she can understand everything they say. A few weeks later, Emile, Francois, and their dog move into their new home near the forest. Emile is soon going to school, and when the teacher introduces him to the class, Nina asks too many questions. Emile decides to lie and says that his mother is dead before explaining that his scar was caused by a lightning strike. Later that night, the city was hit by a severe storm. The power goes out and Emile is woken up by the sound of wind and lightning. He goes to the window and is afraid of a creature peering into the house, but as soon as Francois returns the power the creature disappears. The next day, they receive an emergency call and rush to local lake, where police and fire departments have cordoned off the area. It turns out that a storm caused ambulance to go off the road and crash into a lake, and when they see a police officer taking body away from the creature, Francois fears the worst. It was an ambulance that transported all mutants to the new center, and now half of them are dead and the rest have escaped. The police restrain a distraught Francois as he calls for his wife, but police officer Julia assures him that they haven't found Lana's body, so she must be in the woods somewhere. As soon as they get home, Francois begins hanging some of their clothes on the trees around the house, hoping that the scent of Lana will lead to them. The next day during class, the gym teacher sends the class to tug of war, and Emile's entire team immediately falls to the ground, except for himself. Surprisingly, he is able to fight alone long enough for his teammates to join him, and that can win the match. Afterwards, all are impressed by Emile's strength and invite him to a party. However, Emile is too busy examining his fingers and rushes back to his house, where he uses tweezers to pull something out of his nails and screams in pain. He was shocked to discover several small claws, which meant he too was slowly starting to mutate. Then he looks at his back in the mirror and notices that the shape of his column is also changing. He angrily throws things around the bathroom before climbing into the bathtub to wash away the shame. His dog sits with him in the bathtub to comfort him. Meanwhile, Francois goes to the post office and meets Julia there, who tells him that they are no longer looking because the government has promised to send the military. Suddenly they hear screams because the buyers have seen Mutant. Julia orders her teammates to evacuate the mall, but Francois searches for the mutant to find out if it is Lana. The creature turns out to be a mutated squid that only wants fish, and when it realizes it has been found, it tosses them a box of shrimp and then runs away. While chasing Julia, keeps throwing random food at Julia, but it's not enough to stop trained officer, so Julia lunges at her to grab her. Francois looks under food display and finds another mutant who looks terribly scared, but decides not to tell the police. Next Friday, Emile goes to a party and has a lot of fun. His classmates admire the swords brought by Guy, who will be giving a lecture at the upcoming summer solstice festival. Suddenly, Emile falls ill from alcohol and falls off his chair. Nina gives him the medicine and Emile can't resist licking her hand to pick it up, driving the others crazy. Ashamed and embarrassed, Emile runs through the forest and hears the sounds of the other mutants. The next morning Emile wakes up near the lake when he hears the sound of a motorboat passing by. He discovers blood in his mouth and immediately spits out before leaving after seeing anti-mutant graffiti on the way home. At home, he rushes to the bathroom and throws the feather away, making him realize that he ate a bird last night. Francois and Emile then ignore the barriers left by the police and head into the forest to look for Lana. Emile asks his father how he felt when Lana began to change, and Francois explains that he was never afraid. She was still his wife, just a little different. As night falls, they continue searching the car, screaming through the windows and playing Lana's favorite song at full volume. They end up spending the night in the car, and in the morning, Emile notices that his nails are changing again. Suddenly, his dog runs away and Emile follows him, but discovers a child chameleon in a tree. At this point, the Birdman from the beginning of knocks Emile out and begins beating him with his wings while his claws cut his shoulder, causing him to bleed. However, the man freezes when he looks into Emile's eyes and realizes that he too is mutant. Emile's scream causes Francois to run to his son, grab his hand, and ask Bird to stay away. As they return to the car, Francois announces that they are going to hospital, but Emile refuses because they will find out the truth. Their argument causes them to almost collide with a horse, but Francois stops the car in time and they notice that has arrived at a riding school. The police are nearby and Julia explains that the horses were attacked by a mutant, so Francois takes the opportunity to ask them for a favor. An army nurse stitches Emile and believes the story that the dog bit him on the shoulder. Later, at home, Emile removes some stitches and starts licking the dripping wound. Sometime later, during the lab exercise, Emile notices that Nina has a necklace with a feather similar to the one that puked on him and is horrified, but Nina immediately points it out to him. Then he can't concentrate because he's distracted by ferrets squeaking in a cage. Finally, he grabs her, shouts at her, and tells her to shut up. Emile finds it difficult to ride his bike after school due to changes in his body, and Nina tries her best to support him, even inviting Emile to hang out at her house. While preparing a snack, Emile opens the refrigerator and finds a dead bird. Nina explains that she found him at her door after S party and took his feather for a necklace. Emile understands that he didn't eat it, but left it for her as a gift. Emile then takes out of the lake and catches a fish with his own hands, which the neighbor sees. He then looks for Vogelman, who tries to fly and keeps falling to the ground. Emile leaves him Fish and learns that he called himself Fix because he doesn't remember his real name. After seeing Fix's wounds from the failed flights, Emile points out that there is a safer place to train and takes Fix to the lake. After Emile removes all the branches from the water to avoid further injury, Fix agrees to train there. In the evening, Emile tries to ride the bike home but keeps falling and decides to leave it in the forest and tell his father that it was stolen. Meanwhile, at the bar where Francois works, he discovers that the owner has been making anti-mutant t-shirts, which makes him uncomfortable. He then takes out the trash and hears noises in the backyard when he is suddenly grabbed by a mutant who pushes Francois to the ground. When he noticed the creature is chained, Francois tries to calm him down peacefully but sees the second mutant running away. At that moment, S' colleague pushes the creature back with an oar, revealing that the mutant is her relative and hid him at work. She and Francois attempt to lead the creature back to S' lair, but the mutant is scared and storms to the front of the bar, causing everyone to flee. In a panic, thinking that the other creature might be Lana, Francois runs into the forest to find his wife in full bear form, screaming at him before walking away. Later, at lunch at school, Emile feels something in his mouth and suddenly spits out a tooth. The others are thrilled and he acts as if it were a baby tooth. During the day, he visits Fix, who keeps falling into the water while trying to learn to fly. As Fix takes a break, Emile examines his injuries and removes the bandage from his face and discovers that doctors have performed gruesome surgery on to remove his growing beak. That evening, Julia goes into the forest with Francois to help him find Lana, and every time they see a police car driving by, they have to hide. They ultimately don't find any creature, but Francois is shocked when he spots Emile's bike. At home, Francois finds that the bathroom sink is clogged, so he takes out the pipe to empty it. Inside, he finds hairs and several claws, which finally makes him realize that Emile is also changing. When Emile also returns home, Francois shows him the claws and the bike, but Emile denies everything. Francois has locked the house and won't let him in until he confesses, so Emile tries to escape. A desperate Francois runs after him, knocks him out, and hugs Emile tightly when breaks down. The next morning, Emile eats straight from the plate and not with a fork, but Francois continues to support him. He also shares some of Lana's medications so that Emile can control his impulses during class. Francois then checks Emile's mouth and confirms that the fangs are now at the back of so others cannot see them. He reminds his son that he has to cut his nails every day and stuffs his ears with cotton wool before covering them with hair so that his improved hearing is not overwhelmed by noise. Finally, Francois-Emile shows how to use the body hair removal cream. Later in day, Emile is on the phone with Nina while walking near the house. He asks Nina to scream, and when she does, he is pleased to find that he can hear her the whole time. The next day, Emile visits Fix and finds that he can no longer speak and can only make bird calls. After Emile hugs him, Fix climbs a tree and then jumps to show that he can finally fly, which really enjoys. Afterwards, Emile goes to the festival where his father works. Francois is angry to see him because Emile has to hide, and an argument breaks out that quickly escalates into physical aggression. Emile growls and bites his father's shoulder and doesn't let go until Francois threatens him with a pair of scissors. Annoyed and confused, Emile walks away and meets Nina, who invites him to take a walk through the cornfields. The teens end up kissing and things quickly get heated, so they get dirty. When Emile takes off his shirt, Nina discovers S hair and altered spine, but says she knew and continues anyway. They then return to the festival and Emile goes to the toilet, where he is cornered by a classmate who saw him and Nina on the field. The guy uses a small machine to make a noise that only animals should hear, which immediately causes Emile's ears to ache. Frightened, Emile attacks the boy and leaves scratches on his face. Emile immediately runs off to hide in a field while the boy warns all the locals, causing them to grab their weapons and call the police. The dog soon finds him, but Emile scares him away by barking. When they see the dog running, two men open fire in the direction of and the alarm goes off. Emile runs as fast as he can with a bunch of people chasing after him, and as the guy is about to shoot him, Fix flies in, pushes the guy away, and kills him with his claws. Fix then flies away from the forest so that Emile can follow him. A police car also pursues them and Emile crosses the lake to stop them, but the frustrated men open fire from across the water, sadly hitting Fix. Emile immediately rushes to his friend and cries as Fix dies in his arms. A few minutes later, Francois and the hunters find Fix's body, but Emile is nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, in the city of, a large mutant is sneaking around and army trucks are sneaking into the forest. The next day, Emile hides in the forest and eats all the fruit he finds. In the evening, he climbs a tree and joins the chorus of the night creatures with his own howl. The next night storm hits the area, causing Emile to hide in a cave. He gets scared when Bear comes towards him and realizes that it is his mother. They bump their foreheads to express their love to each other, then Lana leaves and wants her son to follow her. Emile does so and discovers many mutants living together in harmony, including a chameleon girl. At this moment, he sees rockets fired into the sky, meaning the army has detected them. Emile and the other mutants try to escape and hide, but the soldiers make a painful sound, so the creatures have no choice but to throw to the ground in pain and be captured. The only one who escapes is Chameleon Girl, who hides with camouflage. Later at the police station, Francois helps Emile claim that he was drunk and accidentally ended up in the woods. However, when Emile has to sign the discharge papers, his hand cannot hold the pen and tears the paper. When the police officer gives him a new one, Emile can't help but growl at him, so Francois immediately urges the police officer to knock him out before he can raise the alarm. The officer hits his head and loses consciousness, and Francois himself seals document, then quickly shows it to the secretary and successfully leaves with Emile. Then they get in the car and leave the city. Soon the police begin to pursue them, but Francois promises Emile that he will not seek asylum and drives through the fence as quickly as possible to reach the forest. Francois then tells his son to run, and Emile does so, crying with happiness. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.